shit!
No, you can't, Splat. Oh shit.
Oh shit!
I'm going upside down now!
Hold on, hold on. It's not real.
Wow. Those are some of the
it's
best
the new cat
orgasms I've
video.
ever seen. It's crazy. It's amazing.
It's people suffering are the most fun, aren't they? We get a lot of pleasure out of it. Well, because this is such a new area, we went out and worked really hard to try to put together a panel of really the top people who are addressing this from all areas of the field. Unfortunately, none of them could make it, but we have really, really good substitutes here from NBC Entertainment Digital, John Canning. Ted Chilowitz from at 21st or 20th Century
Either way,
Fox. He hasn't even made it to the 21st century, and he's their futurist.
19th Century Fox.
Richard Luquette is the Director of Emerging Business Development and Head of Virtual Reality for this small company gobbling up most of America called Verizon.
Are we clapping for the gobbling part?
Norma Kirkpatrick, who is an actress, writer, director, producer, and as far as we know, the only one on the planet who's ever made anything that's a comedy with virtual reality. Now, although they got his last name there, he's really known to everyone as Tehran, one of the funniest comedy performers, writers, and observer of life. And someone, one of our PAs, who's also head of personnel at Circle Laughs, David Zucker. Now, the way we run this is that we're going to let the videos drive the conversation. People are just going to jump in with their opinions and not talk so much about what their companies are doing, but what's the horizon for this incredible new technology. Excuse me. And the audience, feel free anytime to jump in. We don't wait just to the end for Q&A if there's a salient point. Saliency is golden. So what would you say, Nora, is the toughest thing that you found about doing VR and comedy? You had a quote in Forbes, and this is high level, where you said that virtual reality's ability to cause, quote, spatial uncomfortability is a problem and an issue. Could you please explain that, Professor?
Sure. The thing I just did a show for Hulu that's a 5-part comedy series. And the thing I was super excited about is making the viewer the lead character. So whenever you put on the headset, you are in it and you have responsibilities and you have things that you need to respond to and you're really a part of it. And so I don't know if we're going to show a clip from this, but in the first episode I did called Airplane. You without the exclamation point. You, the viewer, are in the middle seat of an airplane, and you're surrounded by myself and my friend Mike O'Brien, and we're really being aggressive with you, and we're kind of all over you, and you, the viewer, respond. And when I watch people watch that scene, it's similar to the video you just showed. People are uncomfortable, they're squirming, and I think that ability to cause people to have that physical reaction and spatial uncomfortability when you really are in the same space you've always been in is amazing. And to me, that leads to a new set of jokes, a new way to write, and that's what I was excited about.
And so would you have done Airplane in VR, David, if you had that magic technology back then?
About
Would you have done, tried to do Airplane in a VR environment? Would it have helped? Would it have not been different?
You know, it was different then. That was before cell phones even, and we just, I don't think we were even thinking in terms of, you know, VR. It wasn't invented. I don't think you were invented.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
That was not even a thought. And actually, Nora, I just want to remind you that David is entitled to royalties for naming your.
There's no exclamation point. It's a different.
Oh,
It's only if you put it on Facebook, I think. Yeah, but Airplane is completely divorced from any, VR consideration. It's just all it was is we just dug up an old movie called Zero Hour. It was a 1957 black and white movie, and we were used to redubbing these things. And so what we did was actually cast our own actors like Robert Stack and Leslie Nielsen, and redid that movie. And so that was the whole thing. It was really just that straight ahead spoof. And what was as new and different about that, as VR is today, is the fact that we were trying to pitch to the studios. We're doing a comedy without comedians. So at the time they were trying to cast, Chevy Chase or Dom DeLuise or whoever would be funny. And maybe this is like VR, because we were trying to get right from our writing minds to the audience's mind, and bypassing the middleman of comedians. That was pretty smart, what I just said.
Did we
Can we just
record
end with that? Yeah.
We got David. Could you say that again?
Yeah,
The
I don't know.
camera
Yeah,
wasn't.
Yeah, but that's what it was, and I think maybe that could link this. I'm trying to desperately. Yes.
Well, I think
And
you're right
speaking of
about
desperate,
that.
yeah.
Because I spend a lot of time in VR. I'm actually wearing these ridiculous boxes on my face more than not these days on my sort of regular tour of duty, and John is as well, and others. But the really sort of instinctive point of how do you remove the middleman is actually what makes VR so intriguing for storytellers and creators, is that if you look at it this way, it's just a better visualization system than a screen like that, or a television screen, or a mobile phone, because it's more expansive, it's more capable, and it allows you to get one step closer to the story, whether that story is action, adventure, or comedy. So I actually don't see any genre as being off limits for what can be done well in VR. I'll give you two examples that are out there today that some of you, if you touch VR, would know. One of the most popular VR experiences on the market today that it would be called pre-viral, in the sort of sense that none of it's really got a big enough audience yet to be considered truly viral, but this would be the closest thing to a genuine hit in VR, or one of the few, is a VR simulation experience called Job Simulator. And basically, you just live and play inside the world of goofy jobs. So it'd be something like the South Park guys would do if they were going to tackle VR. And it's quite compelling and fun. And then there's a comedy series that's very popular called Rick and Morty. And they just did, you guys, some of you must know it, yeah? And they just did a VR experience. It's a puzzle sort of solving game, but it's within the ethos of their comedic brand. And it works tremendously well if you're a fan of that brand. So I have this very strong instinct that the South Park guys are going to come up with something remarkably hysterical for VR pretty soon, because they did it for console gaming. And if you understand anything about gaming and storytelling, then you'll know that VR and comedy are like going to be linked at the
And so
it's
the
not gonna be a
VR
problem.
content would come through the cell phone, and you'd have a viewer that would connect? Is that?
So, say that again?
I mean, how would the
Can you
VR, would it come to the cell, can it come to a mobile, and you can witness
Oh,
it
absolutely.
from there?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
it's, sure.
On the screen, or do you need a special attachment?
Well, I mean, the most popular viewer of 360 content right now is a mobile device, and you can do the scanning around. You go to Google Cardboard, you go to the headsets and things like that. So the distribution, that's not the challenge. And I think what's interesting about comedy and just some of the other things we find that work well in this medium are the things that strike emotion and like draw you in. And I often have the rule of folks, I say, like, let's avoid the awkward first person moment that VR can put you in, right? Or the don't make me fucking turn around problem that VR often has, except when you're doing comedy, right? Because then it's like awkward first person can be funny, and you can work with those things. Or the joke around, I'm going to keep making you turn around because I'm going to keep doing things to you. So I think there's some fun experimentation that can happen there. It's like what people do with the horror in this medium. It was sort of like horror VR. Ooh, that's a no-dub moment. Because it's grabbing emotions. It's putting you in situations that the more immersed you're in it, the more uncomfortable or emotional it can be to you. When you feel like there is that scary moment, as probably most of those people are watching the various horror pieces out there. It really does strike a visceral moment with you because you do feel like you're in that environment and surrounded in the audio.
Bless you.
And does Verizon have plans along this line, Rich?
The trick is the technology is really a hack right now. I mean, at the end game for virtual reality is what would be the Matrix, for example. I mean, the whole idea of virtual reality is putting you into a world that you believe is real, even though it's not. And it's access to your brain. So right now, the best thing to do is cover your eyes and put something through your eyes into your brain. And don't forget the sound, too, super critical for VR to give you clues on what's going on behind you and whatnot. But eventually, you get all that out and you just get plugged directly to your brain and we'll give you...
I've seen that movie. It does not end well for the rest of humanity.
That's the good point. But no, but at the end of the day, it's how do you make the most out of the limited technology we have? And I think we're now to a point where the technology is good enough that you would have memories of things that happen in the headset that in a few years from now, you would remember it and you would say, well, I remember that. It's vivid memory. Was it real or was it not, right? And that's the kind of things that I think VR can start creating now.
It's interesting.
Let's see an example of someone who actually has done it.
Oh, we have examples.
I recognize that person.
I'm Nora. I'm one of the creators of Virtually Mike and Nora, coming soon on Hulu. Virtually Mike and Nora is a comedy sketch show shot in virtual reality. So we take you anywhere from an airplane to inside a mother's womb. We put you in the position of being a rabbit in a magic show. And we take you on this magical journey, playing all these characters we force you to play.
Casey, are you writing?
Honey, he can't write, he can't crawl.
Parents equal government. Because we took the blanket away?
Honey, you're too big for the blanket. I think the most exciting thing that we're doing is we get to explore jokes and situations we don't get to do in linear storytelling. But when we put you in the middle seat on an airplane and Mike and I are on either side just doing whatever we want to you as a viewer are going to feel, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable, I want to get out.
A verbal, I'm gonna need a verbal. You can't just nod your head, you're gonna have to say it out loud, you just say it. Say yes.
You have to say yes.
Say yes.
Can't take off.
Say it. Say yes.
Can't take off until you say yes.
There we go. Thank you.
Download the Hulu VR app and watch Virtually Mike and Nora.
Nora, what kind of challenges did you have doing that in trying to get it to be funny, obviously, and then take advantage of the technology?
Well, just from the comedy side, Mike and I both come from a sketch comedy world. Mike was on SNL for many years. So for us, this felt a lot more like performing at UCB or something. It's a great combination of theater. For me also as a director, because the whole scene has to be playing in 360. You can't see it in that clip, but we, in this particular one, we had a low budget. So our scripty and our gaffers are people in the airplane with us, but everybody's doing something. Everybody has a story, everybody has a character. So that all has to play all the way through every time. In later episodes, I did do a bit more coverage, but in these ones, the takes were playing through all the way. So everybody had to be on the entire time, which makes the editing easier, but harder when you're shooting. From a technical standpoint, the cameras are changing monthly. So I kind of have a standing reservation at this place called Radiant Images in Glendale, who has a ton of VR cameras and technology and is always developing stuff, just to see what they're working on. I needed a rover. I wanted the camera to move. It didn't exist when I was shooting. The month after I shot, they made it. So I think staying abreast of the new technology, and we shot on a camera called the Ozo, which is cool, was great for what we were doing. The next thing I'm doing, we're building a rig out of DSLRs because I want to have more control over the ISO and the quality. So I think for me, technology-wise, it's like a science experiment, and I really have to be researching every day what's happening, who's making what.
What I just wanted to say to add on, because this panel is amazing, and what's exciting about what Nora's saying and what Verizon and Fox and NBC are bringing to the table, and we hear a lot of these words being thrown out, technology, storytelling. Well, I'd like to add some other words to that platform that, as the comedian, perspective, insight, diversity. Accessibility. These are things as a comedian that virtual reality makes very real. Accessibility is something that social media made between the artist and the audience. Now the fan gets to participate more. They tweet, and Kevin Hart responds, retweets. This is where we're going with it, and that's why virtual reality is the future. But when you look at comedy, comedy is all about perspective. It's about storytelling, as was said, because as humans, we're all storytellers, but comedians are the ultimate storytellers. We're making tragedy into comedy, making light of our stories. And perspective, in my case, for example, is diversity, and that's what the future is inclusivity, right? We're all bringing together a big world into a smaller world. For example, I'm half black, half Persian. That's my genetic makeup. And I don't want Trump to hear. But what I'm saying is, as a black and Persian person, I might have a unique perspective and insight that no one else understands or sees, and I want to tell my story. With virtual reality, I'm able to do so. I literally place you in my shoes. So when you're talking about the future, you're going to be able to walk a mile in someone else's shoes and see the world from their perspective completely. And that, in its way, is going to create the things that we need the most, like peace, understanding. These things come from the storytelling perspective that Nora has created on Hulu. And it's amazing, and it is the future. So we need to pay attention to virtual reality. It's what Airplane did. It cut out the middleman. It made jokes something that we did every day at home, and you could see it unfold on screen. Well, now you'll be able to put on a headgear and maybe later on contacts, and then maybe if Verizon has their say, we're just gonna plug right into the matrix and the computers are gonna eat our cells. But whatever it is, we're going to be able to do so together and understand the world from each other's perspectives. And that way, maybe having that understanding will create that peaceful solution in the world that we're all looking for. Because that's what it is. It's us all trying to tell someone else our story and other people not listening. Well, now we will voluntarily want to listen.
Didn't hear that at the other VR seminar.
There you go.
Bet you didn't expect that from a guy in a bathrobe.
I just want to add one more thing on the challenge of a platform being social and everybody being together. Right now, we're right at that valley of everything where when you have your headset, you're inherently not social. You're like enclosed in that thing, and it's a very, very personal space. But there are now experiments, and Facebook is doing some, and some other companies like Outspace VR, I believe, were the pioneer in creating social spaces, virtual rooms where you could all be together and sharing the same experience. And Reggie Watts actually did a couple of experiments last year about doing a standing one-man show in a virtual room with a bunch of avatars and a bunch of people all around the world sharing his experience. So I think we're not totally there yet on the full social aspect of it, but we're very rapidly going there.
Well, that's a key point, I think, because one of the big things about comedy and the way I perceive things is that you really need that shared experience.
You need to be together.
You really need, and that's why I'd be concerned with the possible demise of theaters to play, specifically comedies. You can still, I think, appreciate a drama alone, but a comedy, you need that shared experience. So if they can do that in
it's
VR,
happening.
We can do it. It
So-
is happening. It is different.
I mean, I know it's not possible, but if they could just do that, it would be incredible.
It's possible.
But what we need to do
It is possible.
is listen to each other. So even though this shared experience is impossible, I think there, we can probably maybe get out of VR into some other invention that will accomplish that.
It's Ted Shilowitz, making the impossible possible.
We can do it.
We can do
Give
it.
us some time. We'll figure it out.
Here's
Give us
an
$6 million.
Well, here's an early version, an experiment of comedy, stand-up comedy using VR.
It's like, well, up until like 6 months ago, every time you were on an airplane, they were like, hey, welcome aboard. It's good to see you. We're going to have a great flight. You can probably get in a little bit early. We have excellent weather. But hold up. if you don't turn off your phone, we're gonna fall out the sky. And now they're just like, oh, never mind. I just had read too many Goosebumps novels late last night.
It's Ron Funches.
Yes.
There you go. Now, that was from Richard and Verizon, and why don't you tell us about
I'll just give a quick background on it. This is hard to share because it's a fisheye view, so it's 180 degrees view, and effectively you need to watch it on a headset. And we shot that 2 years ago now at Outside Lands Festival in San Francisco, and we were experimenting with how to be part of the festival without being there. And there was a comedy thing, the Barbary, whatever the name of it was, that was like on the side of the music festival, and we were trying to give access to that to people that were not at the festival. And we had 3 cameras, 180 degrees instead of 360, so some can argue, oh, it's not VR. I guarantee you this is a really, really good experience for someone that has never had a headset. Put a headset on. If you're sitting, and if you're not in one of those executive swivel chair in your office, but if you're sitting in your couch, your head cannot do more than 180 anyway. So you enjoy all of it like you're there. And it's not 3D, it's just one camera. Everybody I showed this thing to, they're like, oh, it's great, it's 3D, it's awesome. So it doesn't take much on the technology side to get people involved, and we experienced with multiple cameras, and we had one camera that was on stage sitting next to the comedian, and at one point he was talking to the camera, and he was effectively talking to you, and it was very powerful to be on stage with the comedian, and he's now talking to you and interacting with you. So this was an early experiment, but we're still in experimental mode, I think.
I was, you know, the interesting thing, and I think saying it's an experiment's a good thing, because 2016, 2015 seemed like the year of doing things because we could.
Yeah,
like you've seen a lot of things that we've just experimented the crap out of. We're hopefully moving into the year of because we should. Because a lot of the experiences, and I challenge people to think about the experience you've seen, does it need to be shot in 360? Your point about 180. A lot of that POV or cut camera angles. You know, I constantly challenge creators, and I say what you've done, Nora, you've given that the reason that it was shot in 360. You've lent to that. There's a lot of stuff that we see today that doesn't have to be. It's called, you know, I call it the gratuitous 360 moment. I got a 360 camera, let's go build a barn. You know, and I challenge creators to constantly think about that. Like, there should be a reason that you're putting somebody in that perspective, that moment. You know, 360 videos or 180 videos are just that. You know, I think what we're constantly pushing the edge and experimenting with is when we start talking about the VR-ness of it, is can I interact with that space? Is there that agency to be able to do something? Is it, or am I just the invisible characters at the center point of that moment? That's what we're trying to push towards. You know, what's, to your point, Nora, I think you would like that ability to be able to be in a headset where somebody has to say yes until the scene doesn't move on. Mm-hmm. We're still experimenting with that now. What I love about comedy pieces is they can be shorter. You know, they can be that experimental moment, that, you know, elicit emotion. You know, we're still trying to struggle with, do I want to put a heavy headset on and spend 2 hours watching a feature-length movie when, frankly, I just have a really nice television. It's so much more comfortable. The ergonomic factor is a challenge, right? But if I take your thought of, wow, this is heavy and hot on my head, and damn, this is just fucking funny, then it helps that transition. So I think things like comedy, things that grab you and do that emotional moment are the things that are going to help move this forward as people adopting it and accepting it.
I just want to say that was Ron Funches, and despite that clip, that's a really funny bit that you guys missed out on. And if you watch it, you'll be enamored with him and his comedy. He's very funny. But I thought it was very interesting that was shot 2 years ago, and in 2 years, look at how much we advanced in any other form of technology. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like in 2 years from now. And with technology, it seems that it's almost as if it's the stages of grief. We always want to deny it at first and then get angry about it. Things like that. We really do. And then by the end, we accept it. People felt that way about social media. Social media isn't taking away, oh, well, we're not talking in person anymore. Well, as a millennial, what we're doing is we're finding a new way to interact with people all around us. And that's what comedy is. It's about interacting with people around you, right? That is, clearly, that showed me that that's the future. When you guys did it, it was just simply about being in the audience.
Right.
Soon, it's going to be about you being the one on stage. It's going to be about the perspective that you're giving out, and it's going to be something that we're all going to want. We're going to want to accept, and we're going to want to be a part of. And while building a barn seemed very boring to you, I've never built a barn.
It's fun, actually. You
I
should
might
try
do a
it.
360 build a barn, you know? It sounds ubiquitous to everyone, but what it really is it's a different perspective. It's so far removed from my personal life that I would try to wear it. I would try to wear it and be like, oh, so this is what goes on in Iowa when I'm not there. And it's just interesting.
Well, you actually touched on an interesting point there when you talk about what are the things that would be hard for me to do in my real life that could be pretty easy to do in my virtual real life. And that's actually what's pretty intriguing about the medium in general, is like one of the things we built at Fox a couple years ago is we did a piece that was centered around The Martian. And you know, it's kind of hard to go to Mars really, but it's actually pretty easy to go to Mars in virtual reality.
If you have David Zucker money, it's pretty easy.
It's pretty easy. It's actually pretty easy for all of us, right?
Loan me at 20.
The other interesting thing, which you might all want to comment on because I find it fascinating, is in the panel last night, we were talking about all kinds of different things. And one of the most interesting things to do in virtual reality that I have had experience with, I have to imagine you have too, is you can give yourself a sex change with the least amount of trouble. So whenever you get into a virtual reality experience or game or something and they give you a choice of the avatar you want to play, picking a girl or a boy, I always pick the girl. I'm much more fascinated with, wow, I can be a girl. Like, look, I'm a girl now. And my friend Maureen, who has a VR company called Baobab, actually told me that there's a study that overwhelmingly when boys or men go into either video game experiences or VR experiences and they have the choice to be a girl or a boy, they always pick to be a girl. But it doesn't go the other way. Girls always pick to be a girl too. And there's a study apparently that...
I have to, you know why?
Well, maybe you know why. I don't know why.
Can't wait to hear this one.
I want to hear
Me neither.
this one too.
Good colleague of mine, who's a gamer,
Figured I would get it a little more
remain nameless. No, he pointed out that he was like, look, I spend 12 hours a day in World of Warcraft. Do you think I want to watch some guy's ass run around all day long? No.
Hilarious.
That's what he just said.
Want to be a girl.
He just wanted to be a girl. He just wanted to watch his girl character run around. I was like, okay, weird. But
Do you have that website?
Yeah, I do. I'll tell you later. Right.
Well,
Anyway, I just thought that would be an interesting topic.
One of the things that we keep hearing is, well, the millennials want this, and the millennials, we're looking forward to that. We're in this world, but this has to be for everyone. It's obviously the biggest, most attractive target, but you think this should be able to play across the board, and sometimes it doesn't.
Why?
Well, we'll see.
No. But I mean,
No, you're right.
It's to some degree. It's like it's not like Snapchat is for everyone necessarily.
Way to ruin the segue.
Yeah, it's all right.
Torture grandma.
It's just us. Look, it's just a game. Look, it's just a shark on the screen. It's just a game. It's just a game.
So all of these billions of dollars and your future skills are just so that
That's
our
all.
children can annoy us even more.
That really just looks like my grandma answering a text. So I don't really... There was no real big difference there.
Now, Nora, how would you have put that into a comedy sketch? That was obviously real, but what would you have done if you wanted to involve those kind of characters?
Are we sure that Grandma was packing a 9mm?
No,
wasn't Nora.
it might have been.
It was a comedy sketch.
Oh, it was, okay.
That was a comedy sketch.
No,
wasn't it?
I know.
Okay.
I'm saying, how would you have done that in a comedy sketch instead of going?
I'll get back to you. I don't know.
Okay, fine.
I thought it was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about that.
Yeah,
Is that-
that's great.
exactly
Ellie,
right.
what is your question?
So I know with comedy, the talk about going back to big audiences, a bunch of people watching a movie or an event at the same time. One of the things that makes comedy, experience so profound and like fun is laughter. Hearing other people laugh and their reactions, and a bunch of people are joining via headsets. That's great. They're all enjoying the same thing, but how are we then seeing everybody's reaction?
And, I mean, that's actually some of the tech right now is exactly doing that. Mind Show is a fun experiment. They're closed alpha, soon to be beta, and I like to call it mocap for the everyman. But they do have a system where you put yourself in a headset, you do record a sequence, and then you can play back that character laughing, your facial expressions is picking up the audio. So there's no reason that if you did a comedy festival, we all jacked in from different places, we're wearing headsets, when I think it's funny and I'm laughing, Ted hears me. Right? And Ted looks over at me and my avatar is laughing, and it's responding to my gestures and things like that. And the tech is is basically around now that's starting to happen.
Yeah,
So
we're doing that now.
Yeah.
We're testing it and proving it out. So I've sat in virtual audiences. I've actually spent a day doing virtual karaoke, which is just as ridiculous and goofy as real karaoke, where you get up on a virtual stage and you have to sing with your bad singing voice, and there's a virtual audience of avatars watching you. And it's just like the real thing. I've done a virtual reality talk show where I've actually been on stage in virtual reality with my avatar, and a bunch of avatars were asking me things and doing things. And there's a really interesting thing within the dynamics of human nature that I also noticed in this thing called social virtual reality, which is actually quite fascinating, is, when you're with a group of people, and I give a lot of speeches and talks, people are mostly very respectful and very logical, but there's always like one or two people that are just a little too close and a little too clingy and asking a little too many questions, and you try and be nice.
They're called girlfriends.
Yeah,
No.
okay, well, yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? And
He's got dating
you're
issues.
You're always trying, you kind of,
Mine's
in the
here.
real world, you feel the humanity of that, right? And you think, well, that would be really hard to duplicate in virtual world. It's the easiest thing to duplicate in virtual world, because in this virtual reality talk show, there was like a Q&A afterwards, and all the avatars got to hang out, and they were all sitting, but some of them like walked over and got really close, and one of them just asked too many questions, and everybody else in the little avatar audience started to move away from that person, including me, so we were all kind of like moving away. And this person just kind of got more and more isolated to the point where eventually he picked up on it and he stopped asking his stupid questions. And it was just like what would happen in the real world. So
Except in virtual reality, you pull out your ray gun and just obliterate
you can kill them if you want to.
You can
also,
kill them.
right.
Kill the avatar.
But it's a fascinating study in human nature. It's like, as you get closer to the understanding the art form and the creativity form of all this, the things that happen in the real world that we think are funny, like the things with our real grandmas that would happen, when you can bring that into the real world theater of virtual reality and bring that to an audience, that's what actually makes it so magical. It's removing that one last boundary. Like in our world, to give you the lexicon, we call this world the world of flatties. That's a flatty. Like all the little videos you're watching are flat. So you have to try and pretend that it's real. In our world, we're giving you a better pretend system, so that from a comedy standpoint, to what you're doing, you start to feel the reality of comedy. Like, I'm sure every single discussion must start with, wouldn't it be funny if this really happened to you, right? And then we could show that to millions of people, and that's sort of where the medium is going.
Right, and we tried to do half of those ones, like wouldn't this be funny if, and then half of things like you would never be here. Like Mike and I did a twins episode where we're two twins inside a mother's womb who just never left.
That's awesome.
And we built an entire, we just wanted to put you in a place that you'd never be,
Right.
and like what's the humor inside a womb?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? Yeah.
Just one thing in terms of group watching, and I'm sure someone's already done this, and I just don't have access to it yet, but the same way like I go to the movie theater theater with 5 friends, I would like 5 friends to be able to sign on and watch the show at the same time, so we can hear each other laughing. Because, as you said, so much of comedy is being in a theater and having everybody laugh, and it really makes the joke. So I hope that we could do that on the next show that I do.
A bunch of people have done synchronized viewing,
Yeah.
like mass viewing, put people in the headsets and synchronize the experience. And they, Chris Milk, I think, did it as TED Talk. And the whole audience is sitting there. It's a very bizarre picture because the whole audience is basically wearing headsets, but they're all having a shared experience. And so we're physically next to each other. We can hear each other and things like that. And we're all sharing that moment.
It is the oddest use case of the medium. We put almost 300 people together in VR at CES. So imagine a room like this, like 10 times bigger, and everybody had a headset on, all next to each other, which is really weird.
It's a very zombie-like moment.
But it works, if you're trying to sort of bridge the gap. But eventually, the whole idea is that that could be millions of rooms all around the planet, and in your own living room, you still have this social shared experience. It already happens on a very much daily, minute-by-minute basis in the gaming world, where if you have kids that play games, I have kids and they play video games, part of that world is being connected via a little headset, playing some sort of shooter game like CSGO or something, and they have real friends all over the planet that they communicate with constantly and have quite intimate relationships with that they've never ever seen in real life. But they know them, they're very close friends with
They
them.
can emote with them, they can talk with them, the characters have personalities.
And that's in the millions, all over the world.
And they're used to telling stories together, they're used to exploring together. And so there's this whole world that kind of is looking at the rest of us going, oh, this is so cool, it's so new. And they're like, what are you people talking about?
Yeah, it's not new to them.
It's not new to them. Like this is, in fact, they're just waiting for the rest of us to catch up.
Exactly, it's the same metaphor.
It's the same thing. Same, right.
Yeah.
I think that gentleman had a question. Is it any good? Yeah. We'll judge. That still doesn't cut out the storyteller. Like people get confused about those moments where open worlds, it just cuts out the storyteller. It gets very boring in an open world where you get no direction. When you give direction to those people, subtly potentially, or if it's your choose your own adventure, somebody's creating A and B options. And they're taking you along a path that you're subtly being guided on that you may not realize. That's the role of storyteller gets more complex, frankly. It makes your job almost harder because I want you to guide somebody through a world in a way that they don't necessarily feel like they're being guided. Because, like I said, if you've ever played some of the open world games, they can get boring really quickly because you're like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? You find yourself asking that question, or you just go do something nonsensical because you can. But it's when you get those subtle moments that somebody's like, hey, look over there, or I'm going to take you down this rabbit hole. So the storyteller, I think, becomes more prolific, more engaged. That option to play with the user as opposed to I'm just going to set a story and turn you and see you when you're done.
And the other thing too is that you effectively create an experience. So it's not just, hey, watch that movie, watch that story. It's like you get in there, you have one experience, you're in a mood, you're in a moment. And then you could go back to it and then look at something completely different and live it completely differently the next time. So I don't know how that applies to comedy, though, because it's more directed to maybe a
improv.
Or
improv.
It's called improv.
I've always dealt in a world of, it's basically 90 minutes. Most movie comedies, if they're done right, should be 90 minutes. You can tell a story in that time, and so it doesn't leave much room for improv, really. It's like, and comedy totally depends on if the story works. So, and I've done, I've had successes and failures, and the successes were all when the story works and when people were interested in the story. Otherwise, you can't keep people's attention for an hour and a half, and that's where the bar is. And I did a couple of movies that we did keep the attention for an hour and a half, but in the end, the movies didn't work because the story wasn't right. And so it's the key moment, and maybe I'm getting off the subject here, but when at the end of a 90-minute comedy, when the audience walks up the aisle toward the exit doors, that's when you win or lose. Because I've had, there was a book by Alex Karras, who used to be a right guard for the Detroit Lions, and when they played the Green Bay Packers, he said they would be beating the Packers all up and down the field for 2 hours, but then when they looked up at the scoreboard, they had lost because the Packers won, and so that's a lot of it is in that last moment. We did a movie. I don't even want to mention the name because people love this movie so much. We did, and I always argue against it because it failed because we didn't do the story right, and so. And at the end,
I mean, now we need to know the movie's name.
It's none of your business, and I resent and mostly I resent the bathroom.
Oh my God.
But anyways.
Did you know?
You're just so stubborn. How many people, raise your hand, how many people love the movie Top Secret and thought it was one of the funniest movies ever?
Everybody loves it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now he can have a 20-minute argument telling you why you're all
No,
wrong.
this was the biggest surprise of our lives.
So you thought it was working?
We thought it was working. We thought we were the greatest comic filmmakers of all
Did
time.
you realize
of course.
at the end what didn't work? Did you?
Not right away. This was a tough thing to figure out because the thing is, Airplane, was a wonderful, wonderful story, but we didn't make it up because we didn't know what a story was and we didn't know what a character arc was. We just took, Arthur Haley's 0 Hour and put jokes in. So we took the wrong lessons from it, and we thought, well, hey, we just fill 90 minutes of jokes and it's a hit movie. So after Top Secret, we were like, totally, that was the movie. So we were shocked because, but the ending is very important. Your ending in a 90-minute comedy counts 50%, and so our next movie we didn't write. Dale Launer wrote a movie called Ruthless People, and so we directed that. And there's one ZAZ moment in it where in the background the cops are playing tennis in the background. So but otherwise we stuck to a script that was a farce. It wasn't even a spoof because we were so ignorant about what went wrong that we thought, well, maybe people don't want spoof anymore, and anything but that. It was what it was. But so and after that, then we went back and did The Naked Gun and the people at Paramount really helped us, the people at the studio, and because we wrote one version of Naked Gun where Leslie Nielsen as the Lieutenant Frank Drebin didn't really have that core wound in the beginning that you need, and so we actually put that in, that he arrives back from Beirut where he took his vacation, and his girlfriend broke up with him, and he's really hurting inside, and so then he gets angry at the reporters for not realizing how hurt it is, and then he realizes that they're applauding for Weird Al Yankovic, who had just arrived on the plane. But this was so important, and The Naked Gun absolutely worked and it wasn't as funny as Top Secret. The jokes were funnier in Top Secret.
I think your point of the police guy playing ping pong in the background, that's the opportunity in VR. You can have police guy playing ping pong all around every scene and make it an interesting new thing to discover every time you experience it. I think, but the hard part is what Nora said, it's all of a sudden everybody's got to be on top of their game from start to finish on that scene.
Well, if it's one shot.
Which a lot of them, I mean, if I'm doing first-person stuff, a lot of it has to be one shot because it wouldn't make sense to cut over there because you're not over there.
Right.
So in a later episode we did called Suicidal Deer, where you, the viewer, are just, we're two deer in a forest. We have like a talk show, we want to commit suicide. Anyway, you're like a forest camera, you the viewer, so I could do coverage because you were just the viewer at home watching the camera, so that worked better. But for most of them, it just didn't make sense.
And with VR is going to make people better storytellers. It's going to be like Nora is an amazing storyteller, if you guys don't know, especially being part of the improv game. Her and Mike are like the best storytellers on the planet. That's what they do. All they do is tell stories. They create them, they tell them, and that's what a lot of the groups, the improv troops, UCB Groundling does. It's going to just make people better storytellers. And it's cool to watch one movie. You know what's even cooler? 20 movies at the same time. And that's what VR is going to be. It's 20 movies all at the same time, and you're creating your own movie. We used to have this book when we were kids where you would fill in the blank as the story went along. Well, now we're going to do that with our entertainment. And this is going to make entertainment even better. It's going to tell more stories at the same time, simultaneous. There's going to be a lot more Easter eggs in movies. It's going to be more interesting. And more importantly, the artist is going to have to become better. We're going to have to step our game up because now we're not just telling one person's story. We're telling 100 people's story or 20 or however big the story format is. And I remember being in a writer's room where one of the writers, we were talking about diversity, and one of the writers was saying something very real and was like, well, I don't know how to, it was a Caucasian male, was like, I don't know how to write for a black woman. Why would I put that character in this story? Well, now he's going to have to learn. And that's going to be how we become inclusive, is because of virtual reality. Now we're going to have to tell a lot more stories, and we're going to tell those stories from male, female perspectives, different racial perspectives, different sexuality perspectives, orientation, religion, whatever it is. And that's gonna create that space.
Okay. Okay, and this is the challenge. Each of you has 2 sentences to say, where is VR in 5 years?
Best Buy.
There you go.
It's 2 seconds, I don't know.
2 sentences. You can immortalize.
Oh, 2 sentences.
Yeah, no, this isn't.
I like
2 seconds. I thought this was a race round.
I'm sorry, this isn't Vine. That's dead. You
And
have
that was
2
a really
seconds.
good 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping
Makes
to
you
get a
think.
sponsorship. There's a lot going on right there.
My hat's off to you. Yeah.
I think it was succinct. I think it was good.
Yeah, I thought so.
Stick with it.
Cogency
Own
is
it.
good.
Yeah, but I am a little serious when I say Best Buy because it's going to be that accessible. Everyone's going to be able to purchase it and have it in their home. We didn't have big screen TVs until 3 years ago, and now everyone has a big screen TV. You actually go in people's homes and you're like, how do you not have a big screen or a laptop or...
What
It
is
was
the-
a run-on sentence.
What does the futurist say?
The futurist says I'm going to go 5 to 10 years. Okay,
Okay, you can
I'm
do
gonna
5
go
to
out of the
10.
box a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, I have that.
Within a 10-year span, the concept and what every last iota of what you all and what I and what John and everybody else here thinks about virtual reality will be completely and fundamentally different than it is now. Already, because of what I get to do for a living, I see where it's going, and it is nothing like what I call the BOF syndrome, box on face syndrome. Where we are today is BOF, box on face. Tomorrow is nothing like box on face.
Yeah, we're in
There
we're
you
in
go.
we're in the 80s in the PC era. So we love this big screen that has a green glow, doesn't even have color, and it's awesome. It's got 10 megabytes of hard drive. It's phenomenal. We don't know how to fill that. And that's, nobody had any clue that you could have something in your pocket that you can touch with your finger that has, 10,000 times the compute power of NASA that put someone on the moon. So we really don't know. The only thing we know is that it's going to be very difficult.
I know. He knows. Yeah. I often say that the industry has finally reached a maturity to understand how immature it really is.
Right.
Ted, I think, is right about how we are going to consume and be involved in it. And I think the kinds of stories and the creativity that people are it's just going to explode. It does boggle the mind, but when you start really taking those, can I put somebody in the shoes of a black woman that I'm a white male, like that, those transformative moments are going to be the ones that I think we look for.
Well, what I can tell you is that there will be a day in everyone's pretty near future where you will try and remember the last time you opened a laptop like that. Like, it'll be like, if you can try and remember the last time you had a big giant CRT tube monitor in your office or a giant Curtis Massis home entertainment system in your house, like, wow, how long ago was that I used to sit at a desk and the thing was this big and it had this tube on it. There will be a day when you won't even remember the last time you used that thing. It'll be just so fundamentally different. And there'll be a day when you won't remember the last time you actually tried to hold a little piece of glass like this and pretend to wear it. Because that's what we do all day long. We literally are, like, all you gotta do is walk around any big city, small cities, tiny neighborhood, and see what everybody of every generation is doing is they're walking around like this. We call it the 20-degree rule. Everybody has got a little neck strain because they're just staring at this stupid little box like this, when what they're really trying to do is wear it. And eventually, you're going to wear it, and it won't be anything like a box. That's where it's going.
And since you don't believe any of this will happen, David, nor what do you think is the future of this?
Well, I mean, from a technology standpoint, I'm sure you guys can speak to it more, but just in terms of storytelling, the next thing I'm doing is interactive choose your own adventure comedy, live action thing. And I think, I don't know, guys, but with Siri, I feel like the dialogue and the language will become, this is just a storytelling idea, but I feel like not only will you be able to dictate the dialogue, but you'll be able to have a conversation that you're writing with an avatar of sorts, telling a story.
At Circa Laughs, they had a vision that this is going to become so realistic that people just won't be able to handle it.
You didn't even get to say it.
I didn't get to say anything, but
You're at the closing word.
I
Go
can say
ahead.
something?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Well, no, I'm just listening to Ted, and I see only danger ahead. I see people, this is a new world, as we all know, but see people like walking, they're not going to be going like this, right? And they're not going to be looking at it. So they're going to be walking around, with these things on, crossing a street with self-driving cars coming by. So this is going to be dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Seatbelts aren't going to help you anymore. No. So, but and when I think about the future of it, and this is very not real imaginative, but I think this is actually going to happen, and it's not too wild. But I want to see an NFL game, in virtual reality and be on the field with Aaron Rodgers, and be. As he's my avatar, is what you would say?
I can show you stuff in the lab this afternoon.
So all this is just to let us know you're a Packers fan? Is that what this was?
I am a Packer fan, and I have my cell phone here. This is the old device, yes. Thank you.
Hilarious.
Okay. No, that's right. I think at Fox they're probably talking about how does this relate to pro sports, not just
talking about it. We're doing it every day.
Doing it, right?
Figuring it out.
Yeah, I figured. Well, as we said, there are a lot of people who think they just can't handle it.
Wow. It's pretty cool, right? Oh my God, yeah, it looks so real. So these are the redwoods. Oh my God. And now let's take him to the kayak. Holy shit. Oh my God. Oh, that's crazy. Isn't that fun? Oh my God, yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming in, man. Really appreciate it. Oh my God, this one looks incredible. It's so real. What is it, like a tech startup company or something? Oh, they even have the nerd guy. Oh, he looks perfect with his little glasses. Oh, it's so real. Except him. I mean, he's a dead giveaway. What, did something happen with the rendering on this guy? I mean, look at him. Somebody messed up here. Look at his stupid, ugly face, huh? You guys need to fix that. But this looks incredible. Right. So this is. Oh my God, how far does it go? Did you guys render the outside? No. You rendered the outside. Hey, is this one where I can fly? Can I fly? No. Oh my God. Oh my God. Can I do the kayak again?
That's fun.
We have time for one question, sir.
You've just described my entire career arc. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It's it is a constant cycle that we and both sides have to push and pull each other, frankly. right? It is, content is always, we always are desperate to have the content, and these platforms mean nothing without the content. And then what we're trying to do in Tell Stories constantly pushes those platforms to be there, to be better, to be faster. You know, right now the problem with the VR headsets is you can burn through the interesting content in a couple of days, and then you're like, somebody make some more, please, now, that would be nice. Right. Now, I mean, you know, you brought up the ugly specter in the room. The key point that I keep pointing out to people is that we are not relying on the entertainment industry to save this medium. If we were, take it out and shoot it in the head, right? The industrial, medical, all those other areas are putting the dollars into it. Are, you know, they don't have to sell millions of headsets. You know, you sell one doctor who can do a surgery 10 times faster, that is pushing it that farther forward. So there's whole other industry that are moving it forward. Entertainment's just going to get to take advantage of the cheaper, better, faster, stronger.
Well, thank you very much. None of this was real, by the way. These guys are all in their offices. Okay. No, we really, we have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Potentially, eventually. I actually, I asked an audience at some point in time, if you could take it off, would you be comfortable with the idea of something that kind of looked like a Nicorette patch and that you could put right here, that you could then tell it how much of an augmented universe you wanted to have or not have at any given time? And I'll ask you guys, within a 10 to 20 year period, who would be comfortable with that kind of technology, that you could put it on? Now, things could go terribly wrong, right? But things could also go terribly right. So I tend to be more optimistic, and I tend to think that the negative side of things tends to usually be the edge cases, and the positive side of things usually becomes the mainstream case. So who here would do that? I'll put my hand up because I would do it. So, you know, yeah, it's like 60% of you, and it's only 2017, you know. Wait till 2030, and then let's ask the question again and see if you do it.
Exactly.
Well, we hope to see you all back in 2030,
This
even
woman's
shorter.
really trying to ask a question, so you should let her ask.
Go for it, sir. Oh, ma'am.
That's you, yeah.
Yeah.
He couldn't tell what your avatar was.
Yes.
Wow.
I would say words said by whom?
It depends on the experience. I think for things that are deeply narrative, that are really driven by what we would call class of narrative story structure, equal or more. For more modernistic experiences that tend to actually start to rely much more on interactivity, gameplay tied to story, probably a little less, but more critical, more important. And if you play games at all or understand the gaming world, which a lot of people don't understand, the best games are actually the best stories. And they have nothing to do with putting the game physics and game mechanics first. Those need to come along with it side by side to make it a hit, to make it a blockbuster. But, you know, like...
The character acting, the voice acting.
The best, yeah. Uncharted is
and
like...
the scores, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
the
know,
scores big.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I just asked the question, I mean, if you look at what AI engines are doing, you look at Adobe has got a tool set that can learn a person's voice in about 10 minutes. So you can speak into it for about 10 minutes and then it can replicate your voice and say any word. You know, there's some interesting nuances to that, you know, and
yeah.
So there you go.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Stellar Panel, Stellar Director.